welcome to another edition of the show, Frontier Opening Bell. I'm Temple Ashaju. We've got a full house today, starting with Ali Kansachu, who joins us from Nairobi, Kenya. Ayode Jebo who also joined us from Lagos. Thank you for coming through this morning. We've got Onyeka Ijoma joining us from Vetiva Capital Management. Thank you for coming through. Bosin Amofaye, our executive editor and regular here on the show. Thank you for always being present on the show this morning. We welcome you. Thank you so much. We'll tee off with the markets as always, where the Nigerian exchange was positive by 0.50% on Tuesday. BRVM stock exchange positive as well, closed northward by 20 basis points. The Egyptian stock exchange was down by 1.4% on Tuesday. Nairobi Securities Exchange positive as well, joined us, that closed northward by 80 basis points, while the Johannesburg Stock Exchange followed suit to close positive by some 10 basis points. Eastern African markets headline at this point, we've got Kenya Central Bank reopening sale of 2 treasury bonds for 30 billion shillings to support budget. Standard Chartered Bank in Kenya launches mobile loan application for customers. Kenya Tea Development Agency gets nod for future listing on Nairobi Securities Exchange. Rwanda is East Africa's most profitable market for Kenyan lenders at this point in time, while in Uganda, banks some 7.7 trillion shillings credit relief in the year 2020. Let's start with you, Ali, as always, for this Eastern African markets headlines.
Yes, thank you, Temple, and hello, everyone. Starting with the central bank reopening sale of 2 T-bonds, there's been quite an interesting development at the central bank, I'd say, over the last 12 months, where they've pushed the debt maturity profile further out. So a sharp reduction in treasury bills versus selling longer dated paper. And the banks have a good appetite for duration. So, you know, they've done that quite effectively, leaning on the banks who've taken up the paper. And we've seen pretty good absorption for longer dated paper. Standard Chartered, which historically was a niche player playing in the upper echelon of the customer profile here in Kenya, has increasingly made a decision to go after a deeper customer base. And this mobile loan app is going to be targeted at the mass market, and is an interesting development from Standard Chartered, and probably rolls out across the continent. And I think it speaks to a pivot in the strategy, and it'll be very interesting to watch how this unfolds for StanChart. Kenya Tea Development Agency gets the nod for a future listing on the NSE. This will be potentially a meaningful listing. We haven't had one, frankly, since Safaricom. And I think there's a lot of interest behind it. Tea exports are around just over $1 billion a year. So, you know, there's a meaningful income stream behind this. In the last few weeks, they've been distributing shares to the main stakeholders ahead of a possible listing. So this is really further down the pipe than many others that the NSE talks about. Rwanda, whilst it's in terms of the EAC, it probably represents about 3% of the GDP or 4% of the GDP of the East African community. Nevertheless, is a very profitable niche market for Kenyan banks. What's interesting, really, and I saw some comments from KCB's Joshua Oigara as well, is that the Kenyan market has been difficult for Kenyan banks. You know, we had that period when we had the rate cap, and what it's meant is it's pushed Kenyan banks into the region where they've, you know, been meeting a good deal of success. Equity Bank has been the most aggressive with the acquisitions in DR Congo, but KCB has been bulking up both its Rwanda business and its Tanzania business via bolt-on purchases from Atlas Mara. And obviously, they're all knocking at the door further north, at Addis Ababa's door. I saw President Kenyatta was visiting Addis yesterday for the official ceremony around the license that was given to Safaricom. And he pushed quite hard for the mobile money license to come in short order, which was interesting, I thought. Uganda banks okaying 7.7 trillion credit relief in 2020. Uganda, of course, got the IMF package announced a few days ago, so it's allowing them to make more, to do this. And also they appointed a cabinet overnight. Very interesting, lots of women in that cabinet, gender balance turbo boosted. So that will be interesting to keep an eye on.
Sustainable development goals. Thank you very much, Ali, for all of that. Bosin, I bet Rwanda and Kenya, this sort of handshake is something that you like to see.
Yes, but if you permit me to talk about the Kenya Development Agency looking to list on the Nairobi bourse, I think that's some good news. I love and I want to see similar developments take place here. You can get a whole lot of more state-owned enterprises, government agencies, a revenue agency like this, which is responsible for developing the tea market in Kenya, list on the Nairobi bourse. I think it's going to give the Muru Tea, the rest of them, a run for their money, make it a whole lot deeper, the markets, deepen the market a whole lot. That's quite something to look forward to moving forward. I think the Ugandan banks give credit. I'm sure Ayodeji Onyeka knew what the banks did here in Nigeria last year. The central bank told them to did for some rescheduling of credit lines to customers, 707 billion shillings credit relief last year for companies in Uganda, and I think that's quite some. I think it's something that happened across the jurisdictions on Frontier Africa as well.
Thank you very much, Bosin. Let's move on now to the Western African and Nigerian markets, where we've got Nigeria's PIB, that's Petroleum Industry Bill, the NLNG, as well as a couple of other issues, deals there to also be the focal point at the Petroleum Summit holding in Abuja, I guess. Nestle Nigeria is the published list of unclaimed dividends by June the 11th. That will be Friday. Sterling Bank third quarter forecast is out. Gross earnings expected to settle around 38.36 billion naira. Profit after tax bottom line should be around 4 billion plus. Sterling FCMB is also looking to earn some 45.9 billion naira in gross earnings, as well as 3.38 billion naira in profit after tax the third quarter of this year. Coronation Insurance full year gross premium rating at some 16.18 billion naira. Profit after tax 1.2 billion naira. Ayodeji, let me start with you to get a sense of what you make of this whole forecast coming from this banks and insurance firm.
Okay, thanks. I think based on the forecast, we can see that there's a bit of optimism, and I would like to also tie that to the IMF projection. We saw that improvement in terms of the projection by IMF yesterday for Nigeria to about 1.8%. And we believe for us, we know majorly the base effect will also play a major role, while we expect that there will be major, and the government will try to continue to support within its capacity on what it can do to sustain the economic growth trajectory. But we know major downside still remains the security. So focusing on each of the forecasts. So we saw for the insurance company, that's Coronation Insurance. We know there's still, that industry is going to be policy driven. It's only when we begin to see that compulsory adoption of maybe a comprehensive policy, or would you say life insurance, that will begin to see a major improvement. And also the recapitalization process have continued to stall. That would have also boosted capacity within that space. We saw S Holdings coming into that space, I think last week. And we believe that based on what they're also looking at, trying to focus on the lower end of the cadre, that may also help in terms of insurance penetration. But also coming to Fidelity Bank, we are optimistic that most of the banks should also be able to should perform well this year. One major factor that would believe that would impact positively on the earnings of most of these banks is the improvement in yield environment. Last year, if they were able to weather the storm, most of their CRR was even at 0%. But this year, with where you see special bills, the special treasury bills even going for as high as 6%. So that's significant income. Then you look at even the yield environment. So even if they don't increase lending this year, there's enough revenue cover that they will get from other sources that will be able to cover up for the shortfall they may record in income from loans, from loan and advances.
Right. Thank you very much, Ayodeji, for all of those comments there. Onyeka, you certainly cover Nestle Nigeria, and they're looking to release their list of unclaimed dividend. How does that speak to the level of unclaimed dividend in the country at the moment?
If it says, quite a lot in terms of, unclaimed dividend. We've had these issues with unclaimed dividend for quite some time. It's been high. It's been very high, and we know that previously the expectation was that the move towards the e-filing system would make it it will make it a lot more, at least reduce the hassle for people, for claimants to pick up their dividends. But we've not, so far, according to data that we've seen, there hasn't been enough of an uptick. And at least the positive here is that this has created a pool of funds for the federal government to come in and pick up some cheap debt to fund some of the activities. But beyond that, I don't see this as doing much in that space. I'm more interested in the PIB story. The story is quite interesting. According to the Senate and the House of Reps, they expect to pass this bill by the end of this month. We hope that this happens. This has been long in the making. The most important part of this bill here is it sets up a game plan for the players, for the petroleum players to interact with their host communities, and it sets up a forum for the players to interact largely with the government. I'm very interested in how in whether we would see the proposals put forth before about the reorganization of the NNPC and the entire regulatory framework. I'm interested to see how it's going to hold, whether it's going to hold, and how it's going to and how it's going to play out. But beyond that, also the NLNG project, them looking to signing the memorandum of understanding with the 3 domestic firms to supply about 1.1 million tons of gas. Of gas to the domestic market seems very positive. We know that as at last month, we had severe power outages across the country, and 2 months ago, largely due to gas supply issues to some of the power plants, as well as some load shedding issues. And so if we can solve the gas supply issues, at least that would really reduce the strain on the power sector in Nigeria. So that's quite positive. And also on them breaking forth on the new train, on the new NLNG train. I don't know when it's going to be completed, but at least we are moving forward on the gas in the gas project. Like Boasin said the other day, gas is now. The future is renewables, and we need to take advantage of what is in now.
Thank you very much, Onyeka. Boasin, you've got a couple of other headlines in the Western African space that you want to touch on.
Yes, the Senegal story is very interesting with the 5 billion CFA fund that they're getting to set up an Islamic microfinance bank, which will focus on SMEs, MSMEs, non-interest banking. I think it's a very good money. It's a good plan for Senegal with tourism, hospitality, leisure industry, badly dented last year with the virus, and we haven't seen the end of that in the manner of speaking. So setting up a specialized non-interest microfinance bank, to my mind, I think would help the Senegalese authorities able to lend to folks at the bottom of the pyramid in the manner of speaking. And they could just use a different approach than what we're using in Nigeria, because all the microfinance banks in Nigeria to an extent are all interest-based. So this non-interest could actually be a game changer. Let's see how it goes. Maybe they're trying to, let's see what model they are trying to apply, whether it's from India or Bangladesh. But let's see how it works.
Thank you very much, Bosin. This takes us now to the South African markets and headlines, where South Africa's GDP was up 1% in the first quarter of the year, pushing annualized growth rates to 4.6%. Globe Trade Center floating 500 million euros senior unsecured green bonds. And the Botswana Stock Exchange Standard Chartered Bank is to declare a final dividend of 16 TB per share. And Zimbabwe tobacco sales was up by 48.08% to $374.99 million in 2021. I guess that's the first quarter. Anglers Coal spin-off Thungela debut JSE trading at 25 rand per share. Mauritius inflation jumps to 2.4% in the month of May. Gross reserves set at $7.588 billion. There's a whole lot about the Standard Chartered Bank coming seemingly from all the regions of the continent at this point in time, Ali.
Yes, obviously they coordinate the reporting across the board, and hence you're also getting the reports coming out of Botswana. I mean, Botswana is a different African market to many of ours because it's much higher per capita GDP on average, and a smaller population. But Standard Chartered has been, well, I know in Kenya for more than 100 years. They have a great deal of ground level knowledge, and I think they're making an interesting pivot, which we were talking about earlier, which is to try and now pivot on top of technology to deliver to a much bigger customer base. And I think that will be interesting to keep an eye on. If I can go to the South African GDP number, up 1% in quarter one, annualized growth 4.6%. Most analysts I follow are ticking full year GDP a little bit higher since they saw those numbers. Overall, a good performance. Obviously, it's been an export-led story. A lot of agri-exports and minerals leading the way. My concern still is that they do not go into a violent third wave. Numbers have been climbing sharply in South Africa of late, and I think they will be concerned that that does not run out of control. So I think that will be important. If they can get a third wave which is more muted than the first and second, then I think you'll see momentum build. Also, they've really suppressed imports. Exports have done extremely well, and that's why you've got this very strong performance in the rand at the moment as well, and in the stock market, though over the last 2 days it's been a little bit softer, but it's been one of the big outperformers. It's been the place to be if you've been an emerging market investor this year. If I can quickly just touch on Zimbabwe, I remember a tweet from President Mnangagwa where he was very bullish, and he said, we're once again going to be the breadbasket of Southern Africa. And, he's referencing Zimbabwe was the breadbasket for many years. And I think they've had optimal rains. They seem to have now stabilized the whole situation around the farm land grabs. And they're really outperforming. This is a significant performance, I think, and I think will underpin the recovery about which Dr. Matsuli Cube has been very, very bullish of late.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thanks a great deal. Onyeka, let's have your thoughts on the South African GDP data.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ali has covered quite a lot of it. We know that, the GDP performance was very impressive, about 1.1%, if I remember correctly, analyzed to about 4.6%. They also revised their Q4 GDP performance a little higher. I think it was up a little higher. I seem to forget the number, but it's been quite an export-led growth, largely from metal production, and agriculture exports. Also, the financial services sector has been doing particularly well. And then just talking on the main concerns to growth there, it's largely about the COVID situation, as we know that South Africa has been particularly hit heavily. But I mean, there is a bit more optimism this time around, because of the vaccine production agreement that has been signed with Johnson and Johnson, and we're also aware that the firms are looking to sign even more agreements with other vaccine producers, such that it would improve the vaccine production in South Africa, and we expect it also to flow towards the rest of Africa. So that is the main positive here. But that the risk to growth of the third wave still remains very strong in South Africa, as we've seen that they have been particularly hit hard every wave.
Right, thanks a great deal, Onyeka. Moving on now to the Northern African headlines. We have the Central Bank of Egypt receiving 24 bids worth $540.6 million for Treasury bills auction. Telekom Egypt is to gain 4.5 billion Egyptian pounds profit from Vodafone earnings. Spinalex incurs net loss of 19.405 million Egyptian pounds in the full year 2020-2021 financial results that was released recently. Arab Aluminium Company reports 6.3 billion Egyptian pounds or million Egyptian pounds, I beg your pardon, in the first quarter of 2021, while equity UCITS investments at 569.8 billion dirhams in April, the month of April. Something that settles this corporate earnings there. First, your thoughts, Bosin, and then I'll hear the rest.
I think the Vodafone earnings and Telekom Egypt is earnings that is looking so good. I think right now the telecoms are in very good shape. They are the ones we all owe this presentation to the telecoms, by the way. So whether it's Airtel Africa, Telekom Egypt, Safaricom, Airtel Africa, MTN. Look, we will leave our world now in the hands of the data providers in the technology, digital space, and what have you. So I think that earnings, if we get 4.5 billion pounds, Egyptian pounds, by the way, at least it's still a very strong currency from a partner or another company. That makes a whole lot of money to it. Just to sum it up for me, we're looking at the International Energy Agency's reports today. There's a new report on the from the IEA, which should be out by in a few minutes UK time, 11 a.m. Nigerian time. The big oil CEOs will be meeting President Biden today at the White House. The whole issue about climate change, fossil fuel, clean energy will be a very sharp focus with them. So I'm sure it's something to watch out for today.
Grateful for that analysis and insight, Bosin. Thank you so much. Ayodeji, but quickly, your thoughts on the Central Bank of Egypt's $540 million TBills auction.
Okay, I think it sounds very interesting, and this is a dollar bill raised by the CBE, and it was based on the amount they offered, about $500 million, which is a one-year term due June 2022. And looking at the interest rate of average of about 3.08%, I think this is positive, and these are like very close competitor to Nigeria, and we will need to look at what kind of FX management structure are they using. Are foreign investors comfortably able to bid for for their instruments, because I know for Nigeria would also be trying to exploit the international market in the coming months. What are those things that we need to put in place so that we also enjoy that very high interest that Egypt is also enjoying now?
Thank you very much, Ayodeji. Ali, we understand that auction, the central bank actually mopped up all of the offers.
So I'm sorry, I'm a bit behind the curve. Was there any FX risk on this instrument, Ayodeji? Were you basically, did the central bank absorb the FX risk and it's just a pure dollar-based instrument? Because
it's just a pure dollar-based instrument. So it's like raising Eurobond, but this is like short-term instruments, and investors are investing in.
300 basis points over probably 1 year US T-bills are. So I think, that's going to attract a lot of interest. Everyone is stuck. We know that the repo number is close to $500 billion being put on daily deposit at the Fed. So I think what there is short-term liquidity, I think that's an attractive rate. I mean, from my perspective, I prefer to take further yield pickup and run the FX risk, because they've really managed the FX rate since 2016 highly effectively. They got $40 billion in reserves, and the pickup from playing in the Egyptian pound market is pretty significant.
Right, then thank you very much, Ali Kansachu, founder of Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi, Kenya. Appreciate your insights on the show. Ayodeji Ebo from Chapel Hill Denham Advisory Bank. Thanks a great deal for your insights and perspectives as well. Onyeka Ijeoma, thank you so much for your perspectives on the show this morning. Bosin Omofaye, appreciate your editorial considerations on the program. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of this midweek edition of Frontier Opening Bell. I'm Temple Ashaju. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.